trying to remember how I'm trying to remember how I got in touch with Gary, but what I did is I just went to customer support, and they put me in touch with Gary, and Gary contacted me, and here we are. Um, so we have the IMS DBAs, we have Victor from IMS Systems, and we have Andreas from our IMS Systems. He's the IMS Systems manager, and our manager, Al Di Giovanni. So why don't I give the floor to you, Gary, and let you start us off?
Okay. Well, for those of you that don't know me, I'm Gary Turner. I'm your IMS software consultant. You also got Chad Reaver on the phone. He's my counterpart in the DB2 area. So anything IMS, that you're curious about, you hit me up. Anything DB2, it'd be Chad. And Anita, she's from support for IMS, so she handles all the IMS products. So if you open a bug up, most likely you're going to get Anita. So what I figured I would start with is kind of an overview of the whole backup and recovery solution for IMS that you guys have. It's basically a subset of 4 products that we used to sell individually. Recovery Manager, Image Copy, Recovery, and Change of Cume. Now you've also got the capability to do snapshot image copies as well with the used to be called Extended Buffer Manager. I think now they're calling it the Snapshot Upgrade feature, but that's included with part of the solution. Little discovery here, Tony. What all do you guys use from this? Do you know, or are you still trying to figure it out? I know you said you're still relatively new to BNY.
We're still going through that process.
Okay.
I couldn't give you a definitive answer right now, but yeah, we're still going through that process. We're assessing everything that we have.
Okay. So I mean, basically, these are all
from a product perspective, Gary, or what are you looking for them on that answer again?
Well, I mean, I'm sure you're taking image copies. I know Andy and I worked with you guys a couple years ago to try to get snapshot image copies implemented, and then think you guys had like a reorganization and things just kind of fell by the wayside.
Oh, okay.
So I mean, I figure you're probably like most shops. You hadn't done a recovery in forever, just because you
don't jinx it. Don't jinx it. Don't jinx it.
Yeah, not on wood. But I mean, you're mirrored, so typically that covers everyone's backup and recovery solution. But now you're probably getting new regulations that you have to do more of a surgical type recovery, which is probably what led to you're reaching out, right, Tony?
Yeah. I mean, that's part of it. That's part of it. Management has concerns regarding an SGC recovery and how the tools that we have could help us benefit in that recovery. Whether we do recovery, whether it's a point in time recovery or a specific recovery, we don't know what the situation is going to be, but we want to be able to understand how the tool can help us.
Okay.
So Gary, let me add a little bit more to that as well, and kind of what Chad's been helping us out on the DB2 side. The idea here is this is for cyber recovery type scenarios where we're attacked, our data gets corrupted, we find out at a certain point of day that our data is corrupted, we've been attacked, we have ransomware, and the attack occurred at this point in time. And shoot, we're going to have to rebuild our system from a safeguarded copy from a certain point in time. So we're going to have to go back in time, find the last safeguarded copy that's clean, where we don't have any corrupted data or ransomware on the system, bring the system up on that copy. And then now, of course, we've got tremendous amounts of data loss because we've got a safeguarded copy from a previous point in time. So what tools do we have now to, and the term they're using here is rehydrate? How can we get back to, how can we do a forward recovery now, possibly using the IMS logs, doing some sort of a log apply? This is something we're doing with the DB2 side. How can we get, rehydrate our data and get back to at least the point of corruption or right before the point of corruption, around that time, so we have minimal data loss and the applications have less that they would have to replay or rehydrate themselves. What can we do on our side, on the system side, to get the system back to the best current copy that we can?
Okay. Well, the good thing is you don't have to buy anything. This product, you already own it. It's going to be able to do everything for you. You know, obviously we're going to have to save, you know, your IMS logs, you know, you need to take, you know, check your image copy frequency, things like that. You know, if you need to do change of key, if your recovery time objective is getting too long, you know, things like that. But yeah, you've got a solution already. So that's the good thing. You don't have to go purchase any extra software. But anyway, so I mean, here's the 4, you know, core products under it. Some of the solutions that are built around it is Recovery Advisor. So it's going to go out there and interrogate your IMS recon. You know, do I have image copies for every database here? You know, do I have all the log data? You know, based on my GenMax and recovery period, can I recover? You know, do I have everything? Are all those IMS logs cataloged? You know, things like that. So it's going to go constantly monitor your system and let you know way ahead of time, you know, if you're going to have a problem that could prevent a recovery. So, you know, the Recovery Advisor is a very handy tool. So, you know, that your DBA staff isn't having to go out and manually go look and, oh, you know, okay, image copies ran today, you know, okay, the log didn't roll off the catalog, you know, things like that. So you can set that up to be automated for you so that you don't have to go do that manually. So as far as image copy, I mean, I'm sure everybody's familiar with all the, you know, the types of image copies you got. You know, you got a, you know, basic batch image copy, database is offline, you know, depending on, you know, you guys are still trying to evaluate how your system's set up. So, I mean, that'll kind of go into your recovery strategy as well. Sounds like you want to do forward recoveries as well. So maybe if you can't take the databases offline, you know, do a fuzzy image copy. Database is online all the time. You know, we're just copying the database data sets. Another feature we've seen some customers use in the past is an incremental image copy. Now, this is one some folks aren't as familiar with. It will take your last batch image copy, and if you're using change accum, it will kind of marry those 2 data sets together and register a new batch image copy. So might be something you can look into. You know, we've seen some customers in banking, you know, none of the database assets are touched. It's only looking at, you know, things in the recon. So you don't have to worry about, you know, incurring any overhead, actually copying, you know, the database data sets. It's strictly using your recovery assets. If you've got previous like IMS, IBM IMS JCL set up, you know, you can put us ahead of the IMS Res Lab. We'll use their control cards and run as Image Copy Plus. But that's about the most inefficient way to use Image Copy Plus because you don't take advantage of any of our dynamic allocation or anything like that. Since you guys are wanting to forward recover, we want to talk about the image copy restore, but it's kind of a poor man's recovery. You know, it's only going to take the image copy and the change of cum. It can't read log data. So for some customers way back in the day, this was good enough for theirs, but this day and time, that's not really a good feature anymore. So, I mean, with image copy, we're big on dynamic allocation. The easier you can make your JCL, the better. So everything's defined in the recon. Why do you have to go, you know, put it back in the JCL? So define things in the recon. We explode it out as part of the image copy. So as your system changes and grows, you know, if you got CA groups, things like that, you don't have to go repeat the process in 2 spots. You know, just your JCL is more user friendly, you know, and more portable to, you know, save your DBA work. Anything we can do asynchronously, we're going to do. You know, the job is to get in and get out, get everything done as fast as possible. If you need to do any type of command processing, you know, if you need to take a database offline to do the image copy, start it, you know, all of those are options that you can do as well within the utility. Snapshot image copy, you know, that's kind of a quick and dirty way to get a batch image copy. So it's going to work with, you know, XBM. It's going to go out there and, you know, kind of get a quiet point for the group, snap it off, take an image copy of that, but it's going to release it back to the application. So you can get a batch image copy with very minimal outage. It's it's kind of similar to what you guys do with RUV. I don't know if any of you are familiar with that. I know I worked with Esther Linda a lot way in the past, but it's kind of the same technology, but we're not taking a physical snapshot. You can actually create a standard image copy off that if you need to, or you can take the actual physical. So, you know, if a batch image copy is something you want to do, maybe snapshots something you want to look at as well. As we take image copies, you know, we're not just copying blocks, we're checking the pointers so that you know what you backed up as a healthy database. So does a hash check along the way. So you can, you know, feel good about, you know, you took a good image copy and not have to wait till you do a recovery and find out, hey, I got pointer errors. So one of the integrations with other products that we have, you guys have our reorg solution. You know, it used to be called Maxim, now it's BMC AMI reorg for IMS. So as you do reorgs, you can take image copies at the end of that, all in a single job step. So you know, if you're looking at your reorg solution as well, something you can do. Copy image copy. This may be something you want to do. It's something I did in the past. You know, we didn't have time to take, you know, 2 image copies at once, but we'd take our initial to DASD, get our system back up, and then at our leisure, we would take that copy, stack it to tape, and register it in DBRC. So then when you got the DR, you know, you could use that without, you know, with very minimal changes to your system. You know, it's just one keyword. Hey, use image copy 2 rather than image copy 1. Or if you don't want to serialize your process, so you stacked them on tape, that move image copy, you could actually explode that tape out, put it on DASD, so then you don't serialize your recovery process. So some kind of different things you can do there, you know, as far as multiple image copies stored in DBRC. Virtual image copy, if, you know, with index build utilities, there's no reason to back up indexes if you have them. Some customers don't mark them non-recoverable, just haven't got around to it. Yet in a recovery scenario, you know, you're going to have that, you know, need image copy set on your index. Virtual image copy, when we take it, we're just going to lie to DBRC and say, yeah, we made an image copy. It'll be registered as dummy. So, and the DD name in DBRC. So, you know, obviously it's ideal to set them as non-recoverable because you don't incur that overhead in IMS for something that you can rebuild off the database anyway. If you need to do any compression or encryption off your image copy data sets, you know, there's features to do that as well. And feel free to jump in with any questions as we go along.
Yeah. Hey, Gary, this is Tony. Can you go back to the previous foil?
Yes, sir.
On Pointer Checker Plus integration,
Mm-hmm.
do we have that with our license, or is that a separate item that needs to be purchased?
Well, you have hash checking. So if you were to find a pointer issue, you don't have Pointer Checker Plus to actually go fix that. So in your case, you'd have to go do a reorg to, you know, clean up those pointer errors. If you had the actual Pointer Checker Plus solution, there's zap utilities. You can actually go zap those pointers and fix them if you need to. But in your case, you just get alerted, hey, I got pointer errors. Most cases, go run a reorg. It's going to clean up those bad pointers for you.
So we could run the image copy with the hash checker.
Yes.
Okay.
So at least you get a warm fuzzy that, yeah, my database is healthy.
The thing is, what you were talking about was the full image pointer checker rate, because it's going to depend upon what type of point average you have. Reorg sometimes won't solve the problem depending on the point average. And you do a full, I think he was trying to refer to a full pointer checker, which does. So there is a difference.
Yeah, you can't take it offline into a full pointer checker because you're not licensed for that product, from what I saw.
That's correct. But again, we can do the hash check with an image.
You can do the hash check with the image copy, correct?
Okay, and that'll tell us if we have a pointer issue or not.
Right.
Okay.
Gary, hey Gary, this is Ed. Uh, with the hash, we've been curious actually. Does it create records in the PDX whereby we might be able to keep tabs in terms of our space monitoring? I think there are two fields that are created in the PDX that would allow us to tell us if a database was going offline and additionally how much space was on the pipe. Is that is the hash capable of doing that, or what we need to pull?
Yeah, I was going to cover that later on, but we'll go ahead and cover it.
Okay, never mind. We can wait. We can wait.
Okay. So yeah, that we'll get into the GUI piece of that. So PDX is kind of outdated. Yes, we still support it only because we have customers that have built their own custom processes around it. But the repository within our toolkit is kind of what we've been steering customers to for the last 10, 15 years. Because no new development will go on with the PDX. But anytime a pointer checker runs, with the toolkit set up, it's going to feed its statistics.
Okay, so with that process used, I saw a new utility out there called PCP Space. Would that process be dependent upon that?
PCP Space. That's one of the utilities I want to check.
Okay, I thought so. Okay, I'm good.
But we'll get to the trending that you're talking about as far as monitoring space and stuff. I mean, you can do it manually, but we've got products that do it for you as well.
Yeah, well, we do it manually now, so we can appreciate that.
Yeah, we'll get to that.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. So as you can see, the JCL's a lot simpler. If you're using the old IBM stuff with all the control cards and things, it's pretty easy to go through here and look and see, your control cards that you're using. In this example, we're going to stack everything on one tape by change of queue group. That's it. You don't have to list every database. You go look at the change of queue group. It's going to stack it on a tape. You can make multiple tapes if you wanted to, all in one job step. So like I said, everything's based off dynamic allocations. You don't have to put everything in the JCL. As long as it can get to that recon, it's going to go, figure everything out for you. Some of the things we came out with a few years ago, we had customers, that were running different type of databases. Some of it was full function, some of it was HowDB, some of it was FastPath, and they kind of wanted to be able to simplify, some of their model statements that's actually going to create the output image copy data sets. So in this one, you've got different models. If it's a full function database, use this naming standard. If it's HowDB, use this naming standard, and so forth. And then based off the database type, it would automatically know which model to use for the database name. So some of the ways you can kind of mix and match your environment, because who knows with your application, you may have a mix of database types, and maybe everything doesn't play well together. So another way of using dynamic allocation to kind of make your job easier from a DBA standpoint, if the application's, kind of a mixed bag of database types. Like I was talking about earlier, stacking. One of the features we came out with, as far as the model name, I remember back in the old days, if I put new databases in my system, I had to go create the GDG base. Now we'll automatically do that for you with that GDGY keyword. So if the base doesn't exist, we'll create it for you. In that retention period, they'll give you, how many versions you want to keep. So for us, it was all about making the life of a DBA easier. Anything we've found over the years to do that, we've tried to incorporate into the products. Like I said, with the grouping, you can do things like that. So there's keywords along there. It's, group limits, so you can, kind of throttle things back a little bit. You can define as many groups as you want, based on, how the job is set up. It's going to go try to do everything at once. So I remember back in the early days, implementing the BMC tools, we do stuff, we'd eat up every tape drive. Well, you might get a call and get hollered at from your system folks on that. So we give you ways to actually throttle it back too if you need to as well. So keywords like group limit will help do that. That way you don't overrun your system and get a phone call from operations that you're using all the tapes and quit. So, obviously we're going to try to do as much as we can in one job step, as possible. So, you know, if you need to, you can throttle it back. Here's the one we talked about with snapshot processing. You know, get a batch image copy, very, very minimal outage, just long enough to get that little quiet point. In this example, you see the consist keyword. This is by DBD. So it's going to get the timestamps in that scenario would be, you know, whenever it got the consistency point for that DBD. If you change that to global, it's going to do it for everyone. So it's going to have to quiesce all those. Depending on how your application's set up, you know, if you want a consistent timestamp for this image copy, you know, that may be an option for you as well. And the PCPY keywords, how you check those pointers. See the Plex name keywords. So if you're in a data, is your IMS, is any of it data sharing? Is it all single IMS?
Single.
Single. Any common service layer set up or just plain Jane?
CSL setup.
Yeah, have you got the SCI, started tasks, operations manager, resource manager?
Yes.
You would, okay, so you do have the SCI set up, okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
in all actually, the Snap technology and platform has actually been tested through tests and has actually been installed on the on one of our production systems, but we haven't gone any further with it.
Okay. So you're kind of familiar with this then. I remember that's where we left it off a couple of years ago, or
Yeah, and we got
been a
it into
while.
production. Yeah, and we actually did get it in production, and it kind of fell by the wayside.
Okay. I mean, if I fell by the wayside, you mean you quit working on the project or you put it in and haven't touched it since?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. Pete and I were kind of working on it together, and after he left, we kind of everything. We kind of waited on direction, so it's still kind of on hold. We don't. So we're just now getting back to it, to that point. Actually,
Gotcha.
it seems like, yeah.
Well, yeah, we can definitely set up some other times. You know, I can definitely jump in and help you look at it because that's what I'm here for.
Thank you.
So I mean, as you can see, this one's going to use that model matrix we looked at earlier, where you can have all the different models set up. You know, I mean, really, how you want to do your backups, you know, it depends, but you got lots of options. That's a good piece. You're not kind of pigeonholed into just you have to do it this way and this is the only way. So tools give you a lot of flexibility as far as that. One thing here is this checkpoint keyword. So let's say you have an image copy job. Maybe you're backing up, you know, a couple hundred databases in this change of queue group. You're 75 databases in. You have some type of issue. Maybe, you know, you ran out of space. You were going to tape. Maybe you ran out of tape. Somebody didn't mount any scratch tapes for you. You know, whatever kind of add in. You fix whatever problem. You just restart the job from the top. It's going to pick up right where it left off on the last successful image copy. So you don't have to go reprocess everything just from an image copy failure. You know, depending on how many databases you have, you know, this may be something you want to look at because, you know, and in our environment these days, nobody wants to waste a single CPU cycle because they're always looking to save CPU. So option you may want to look at, you know, we can definitely explore it if you're interested. Here's kind of the copy image copies we talked about. You know, you can make copies of image copies if you need to, you know, because within DBRC, you can only have 2 per data set. Now, we'll get into it with the recovery manager, you can actually register up to 10. So depending on how you want to do your strategy for this, you know, maybe you have 1 image copy on DASD, image copy 2 on tape. Maybe the third goes to some worm device or cloud, you know, something else that's immutable. Maybe that plays into your strategy. The good thing is, you know, if you put it on copy 3 with, you know, the recovery manager repository, all you got to do is change 1 keyword and it automatically knows to go to image copy 3, 4, 5, whichever one you tell it, rather than having to bring the data sets over, massage DBRC like people used to have to do in the past, you know, just to be able to do a forward recovery that way. So, you know, simple keywords like that definitely help make the DBA's job a little easier if you're going to have to use, you know, we'll call them unconventional assets that aren't registered in DBRC, but with Recovery Manager, we keep a copy of them for you. So that's the image copy. Any questions on that one?
Well, I wait till you go further because people are talking about, when you talk about online image, then the word kick here, CIC, is the BMC terminology to copy, image copy. There's, I think, another product that they say kick is really a concurrent, it's an online copy,
Okay,
similar to your
yeah,
OIC. That's why acronyms have to be carefully
right,
played.
right. So
Okay.
yeah, the OIC would be back toward the fuzzy image copy, or
Right.
it's going to be registered in DBRC as concurrent. So, but it doesn't matter which type of image copy you take. These utilities are going to go interrogate DBRC and automatically know, hey, okay, here's my image copy. You asked for a point in time, we're going to recover to there, that kind of thing. So,
okay. With that said, with a fuzzy image copy, did you consider that valid recovery point that at that point as defined by DBRC, or do you have to also make sure you have to have whatever assets needed? Because there's people been saying things that sometimes I'm just, I've worked with your products. A fuzzy
right.
image copy point doesn't guarantee point-free error database, especially defined by the DBRC, IBM's idea of what is considered a valid point in time. The
Right.
word pit sometimes gets a little misconstrued because your product is, since the beginnings, had a pit thing, which meant that, hey, we could get you here, but we're not going to guarantee that you don't have any porting problems at that point because you're using a fuzzy image.
Well, we'll get you to committed transactions up to that point, but here's one
Okay.
caveat of that. So let's say you picked the timestamp of the online image copy. The product is still going to require the next 2 IMS logs just to validate nothing was in flight, or be able to back out, what was in flight.
Okay. So it's not at the magic wand sometimes.
Well, it's built into the product. You never know that.
Right.
You just pick
Well,
a
I never
point
had
in time.
we never had the opportunity to have to use it because we had pretty good things. The key here, some of the things that have been mentioned, well, I should wait till you finish, is that
Oh, that's okay. I like the interaction.
they're doing a recovery. They say recovery, but we was told that the possibility after IMS comes up, warm and dynamically allocates itself backouts, which is perfect. I mean, that's the resiliency of IMS. And then your databases are good at that point. They bring it back down, as long as they're okay. The question was, what happens if you have to go forward and they've restored things and you don't have log information and what was done? Say you went back 2 days, but you want to come back forward. So if they lay down this is called SGC, safeguard copy. So the DASI was set up backwards. Now you don't have the information for all the stuff that was done, or some of the stuff, whether it be 2 hours or an hour. The logs, depending on how they do the testing, as far as safeguard copy. How do you collect the things that were brought back and come forward? So certainly, if they said, okay, we came back to a point in time, say today, say right now it's 4 o'clock, and say, okay, I'm not even going to go back further a day. I'm just go, okay, they come back, it's 4 o'clock today, right in the afternoon, evening, and they say, oh, we got to go back to 8 o'clock, and they burn down safeguard copy. Okay, that means they overlaid the existing recons and everything else there. Okay, now you don't have your resources anymore, so you don't know what happened from 8 to 4 o'clock. What are the elements you need to collect? In other words, okay, there was logs that were put in there that you went back to the recons to 8 o'clock in the morning. How do you come and find all this information? That was the big question about things. Whether you use your product or other means of doing it, is coming forward with missing information, logs. If there was an image copy taken, a fuzzy image copy, change of cumes. And that's the thing that I'm curious about. The product, can it collect things that we went back from 4 o'clock to 8 o'clock in the morning?
Right. And that's the same concern a lot of customers have because, they're using this safeguarded or cyber vault or whatever, they're using to flash their whole system. You've still got to have these assets elsewhere as well because, like you said, if they restore it back to 8 o'clock, all your stuff for the remainder of the day is not there. So, whether you put maybe your slids on DASD and if you put maybe recovery log data sets, maybe put them, offsite tape, cloud devices, worms, whatever you want to call it, something that's not part of that safeguarded, that's immutable that you can bring back if you needed to forward recover your databases.
Yeah. Now let me ask you, because I hear people say full recovery. Full recovery meant, to me, in my opinion, back to a valid point, okay, based upon TBRC's or IBM's definition, which could mean a change of queue, a log, after a batch log. It could mean, it depends on scenario. But again, if take that for instance, they say they went back to 8 o'clock. Okay, if you don't have the scenario to come back forward to the two logs and all the assets, then what do you do?
Right,
Yeah.
and that's
Okay.
something we're looking into. Basically, that will be a challenge that we're going to have even from the DB2 side. Every time we archive any of our logs in certain image copies, we do have to come up with a solution where this is offloaded immediately to some secure site, a cloud service or something. These are additional assets that we will be required to offload in order to basically, do a forward recovery. In addition to our safeguarded copies, those are basically protected in an isolated environment. We would have to do the same thing with any other artifacts that we would require to do a forward recovery.
And
Norman, for a BMC solution, we have a solution, we call it Amy Cloud. It doesn't put the data into the cloud, but it does write it to object storage. So it has capabilities to write to object storage, which by nature is immutable. So you'll be able to get that data back if you go back to 8 o'clock. It's off the frame. You could just call it and recover it back to the production volume. So that's a BMC solution. There's other solutions out there, but that's what BMC is pushing.
Yeah,
Sounds
but
good.
regardless of the solution, cloud-based or not, it has to be integrated into Recovery Manager. So from what I hear you saying right now is that, and this was the basis for the meeting to discuss safeguarded recovery. BMC does not have a solution or a recommendation on how something like that could be done. What I'm hearing is that what BMC has with Recovery Manager or Recovery Advisor is the ability to do a point in time recovery, assuming that all the resources are available, and that would be the log tapes, image copy tapes, and the current recons. But as Norm mentioned, if the safeguarded copy restored 4 or 5 hours later, is there any way today that BMC could recommend of recapturing that data that was processed in that 4 or 5 hour time period?
From a DB2 perspective, yes, we can. We have extended recovery point, and then we would recover the objects just applying the log. Because remember, your safeguarded copy is pretty much going to recover your objects. We just have to apply the log from, in the case of 8 o'clock on.
Sure.
So in the case of DB2, yes, Recovery Manager supports that.
So it keeps the logs that have been after 8 o'clock. It kept stored in the cloud or some sort of repository. You saying now? Or is that repository? I mean, is it on a DASI? Is, like you said, the cloud, or
We don't know
where
yet.
is it?
That's a solution that we need to figure that out. Once we
Okay.
we're doing our POC right now on the DB2 side. We're cheating basically we're just copying the logs from the production system over to the recovery site. But in reality, those logs would be offloaded to a safe site such as cloud or immutable, storage somewhere where those would automatically be restored in case of any sort of, safeguarded copy recovery. And that's why, we were wondering here from the IMS side, does BMC have a solution similar to what we are doing on the DB2 side, where we can just, we can take the IMS logs and, potentially offload them to some safe storage site, cloud or whatever. And then when we recover our safeguarded copy system and recover everything to a certain point in time, can we apply those logs to IMS and get the database application data more current than what we currently have?
Sure,
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
All that's going to depend, as you mentioned, Andre, all that's going to depend on what resources are available.
Well, what do you mean by resources? The logs. We're going to have the logs.
Well, the logs and the logs are going to allow us to do the point in time recovery.
Okay. That's what we're going to do. So we'll have the logs. We'll give you the logs.
Yeah, if those are available, those are available somehow, then we stand a chance of doing the point in time recovery up until, whatever time the outage occurred.
Yeah, so you're telling me that you can do a forward recovery. We can give you a safeguarded copy system at 8 o'clock, and we can give you the logs up to 10 o'clock, and you can basically do a forward recovery up to 10 o'clock.
Should be able to.
Yes.
Yeah, should be able to.
We should be able
Well,
to.
hold on.
That's correct.
Just as long as, as they said, certain logs, and as far as I'm concerned, when it comes to IMS, is that you don't end up with pointer problems. That's my biggest thing. You could run a job and it could be looking good, but then when you go to look at it, you find you have pointer problems. I mean, like they said, okay, you could do the pointer checking, whatever you want to do, but you have to have a clean database. Now, hopefully, you may want to bring it up and bring down the IMS, as far as I'm concerned, at that point in time, just to make sure you have everything. The scenario becomes different, and as far as BNY Mellon's, BNY, this is 24/7, so you may have a lot of different activities based upon the applications, not so much the control region itself. It's the application. I think that he mentioned it depends on how your application works. You can't say take a sync point for a change of queue based on the thing, because you may have so many things out there that some of the QuiS may work in different.
Well, it's the same problem you're going to have with a safeguarded copy. It's a snapshot of the system at that exact point in time. You're going to have data loss at that point. What we're just trying to do is rehydrate, the data to get it more current up to the point of corruption, provide as much capability as we can to do data recovery, so we don't have that, so the application teams have less to recover on their side. So we can recover the system within a 2-hour window, because that's how often we take safeguarded copies. But can we take it further than that and recover up to the point of corruption or the attack?
Yeah, these things have been out there since day one, as far as that type of scenario. Everybody's been talking that, at least as far as I know. But again, it's a good thing. I mean, if they could do it. As a matter of fact, they supposedly, I'm not trying to push BMC products, yay or nay. I work with them and without them. The question was, they had a feature at least, but I never seen everybody successfully use it, where you can do the syncing of IMS and DB2 theoretically. And
well, you can do a coordinated recovery across the
coordinated
two.
recovery. That's
right. One or the other has to be the driver. So you use that same point in time timestamp, whether IMS is your system of record or DB2, just use that same timestamp, and then both will be in sync based off of that.
Yeah.
Like I said, depends on.
I mean, there's no product that coordinates the two together, but I mean, just past that, if you're the IMS guy either give or receive that timestamp, and then both of you use the same one, and you're both.
Yeah,
both
I mean, the timestamp is going to be dictated by
right.
by
Somebody's
a
going to be
group,
telling
yeah,
you.
by
Yeah.
somebody else, not by us, and
Right.
everybody's going to have to follow that timestamp.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, so for us, I mean, it's, we can do a full recovery up to the last log that we have. Right?
Yes, yes, of
Whenever that
course.
is. And so, and one of the things we're looking at is doing archive logging, at least on the DB2 side, more often, maybe even every 5 minutes. So we can get within 5 minutes of any sort of recovery that we want, any point in time that we want to get to, we can get within 5 minutes of that. So, and all we really need are the DB2 archive logs. And so the question I have, and it sounds like you guys know how to do this, is what do we need from the IMS side? Is it just the archives? Is that all you need?
No, the olds is actually all the online data.
Online.
You need, yeah, you need to cut a slids.
What?
Do an archive, which will create a slids, the SLDSs.
Okay.
Or you can also create RLDSs, which only have recovery information. It doesn't
Yeah,
have
so
all the other records that a slids would contain. So that actually speeds up your recovery. So that's one of the things you get into. If, okay, we didn't recover it fast enough, maybe
Okay.
maybe you start looking at creating those.
This is what we need to know. This is what we need to know. What's the process for doing the full recovery? What artifacts do we need? How often do we need to produce these archives and things like that? So
right. I mean, how often you produce them is up to you guys. How every 5 minutes, if that's what you're going to do with DB2, I would say keep IMS the same.
yeah.
Well, the important thing is going to be how is BMC going to offload the slids or the RLDSs?
Right.
That's what if we've got that offload, then our point in time recoveries are very much simplified, if not resolved. I mean that right now, from what I'm hearing, DB2 has that capability, but IMS does not, and you're working on it.
No, we're talking about the offsite storage cloud service, right?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, no. That is a something we still need to solve. That's a problem we still need to solve. We don't have that solution. We're cheating right now.
What I heard was that they have something like that for DB2. Is that right?
They do. Yes, IBM has something. BMC has something. So that's the solution we still need to find.
But we do not have anything for IMS, and that's what BMC is working on.
And we don't have anything for DB2 either.
Okay.
Yeah, everybody's right now.
What we want to know is how do we
POC
get
right now.
Yeah.
How do we get through what process with IMS through the logging? Do we get the logs off
Site
to another site?
Right.
That's what we need to understand.
Well, that would have to be done. Wouldn't that have to be done, BMC? Wouldn't that have to be done with the archive job?
Well, that's just it. Yeah. But the RL does it was the archiving, and then you have to change the QM stuff. So all this has to play in essence. In BNY, they do use RLSs. Where I came from, as the guy said, they just use SLDSs. Now that's the thing.
I mean, either way,
yeah.
Either way, we have to define what needs to be defined is the logs, whether they're RLDSs or LDSs, and the change of QMs, and maybe even the image copy. So it's it's something that BMC is building on. I don't think we're going to resolve that here, but we need all those mechanisms that allow us to do a recovery today. We need to see, can we get a backup so we can do the disaster recovery, the safeguard.
What I find interesting, and maybe BMC can answer this, there is a process called roll forward IMS. I've done it maybe before with the help of Dennis Wheatley, of course.
Yeah.
Where you take a thing and you roll forward, and the only thing you do is whatever that, you just got to know that your database that's on the pack is good, and you roll forward from that point to logs only, logs and or change a queue.
Right, and that's kind of more replication. You've got a duplicate database that you ship logs, and it applies those logs constantly.
Well, this in the scenario that we're talking about, that's basically what you did, because the SGC people laid it down with IMS, and I think our IMS person said that what they're going to do, like they do now, bring up the system, make sure everything gets backed out, because dynamic get back out will work at that point, supposedly. Everything should look good. You bring it back down. Okay, now you have the thing down. This should be a good database. Now, can you roll forward? Which means just RLDSs / slids and or change cubes.
But
Right?
you want to be,
you don't use USI. What is it? I think USIC in your recovery. You use, I forget the thing, a US something, and I would say, okay, our database on DASI looks good. Let's just bring up the logs and or change cubes.
but do you want to be applying those constantly, or just playing down your snap for forward recovering when you need to? I mean, that, roll forward you're talking about is more of a high, kind of a different high availability if they needed a duplicate somewhere else but couldn't afford mirroring, is the way people have done that in the past.
Well, basically, if you think about it, this is what they're talking about with the same scenario holds true with the safeguard in a way, because they've laid it down and everything was good. Now, of course, everybody's going to say, okay, what is the amount of time do we have to do this, because the business needs to run?
Right.
What's the quickest way? That's the key. The methodology is another thing, but the key is which one's going to work. So if you had the thing, you're supposed to be able to roll forward. It was done before. I know I've done it one time before.
Right.
And it wasn't a duplicate. But the same scenario felt true. The database was good. The key was the recons and the information has to be there, at least to do it through IBM's what they consider valid recovery point in time. To say, okay, we can come forward at that point in time.
Right.
Again, the PIT thing is something that I work at the bank now, so I don't like to play with the monies that here. One bank transaction could be $1 trillion. It's not like there's a piece of wire that somebody could fix. It's a little bit, to me, something that needs to be looked at in detail.
Yeah.
So it's
But
a little different.
In that scenario, if you're shipping over logs and applying them all the time, let's say that $1 million transaction went through that shouldn't have, you don't catch it till 2 days later. Well, it's on your target database too now.
Well, no, but that's the scenario we were talking about. Somebody did something wrong. You got to go back. But we don't want to apply it. We're talking about the methodology. The methodology saying if you look at the and I have to look at the thing. I haven't done it in a long time. When you do a recovery, you use in one of the recoveries underneath the covers. I don't know how you guys do it. I know you have to play with it, not play with it, but you have to utilize that particular thought. Is there in a recovery, the US, I think it's USEIC means I'm going to use the image and anything other resources. Whereas the other option says, no, I don't need the image, because I know my database is there. I'm just going to need the logs and or change cubes. Let me see if I can find that real quick.
Yeah, that's a roll forward. It keeps it
roll forward.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter whether you're doing what was said, oh, people do this. No, this is a scenario that could work too quicker, because you don't have to use an image at that point in time. It's good. They brought it up and it's there. Just roll forward. Again, that depends on the scenario and how much time people want to get the systems up and running. And of course, like we've all been saying, where are you putting that information? And also, do you have a product that says, okay, can it reverse it and put it in the recons? Because everybody says everybody depends on the recons. That's the main thing. Or do you use a cloud thing and say, okay, we're not really using your real recons, we're using our particular way, and we're going to do this. Because again, the information has to be in the recon based upon IBM's guarantee of what they consider to be something that they can't be sued, I guess, for. This is what they live by.
Hold on a minute. If the recons are, you can do a recovery without the recons. Hold on.
Right.
If the log tapes are available, the image copies are available, if the change cubes are available, that's what you need. they don't need to be in DBRC.
Right, I understand that. That's the old way of doing it. You actually then you have to sit there and manually say, okay, I have to make sure that
Well, yeah,
the
I mean,
sequence, the sequence of this.
it depends on what BMC or another vendor is designing. I mean, what we're talking about here, what we want to find out from BMC here is what do they have from an SGC perspective, and right now they don't have anything. They're building on it.
Right, but that's what my point is. In those days you had, that's why some people, they never registered some things in the recons in production. Then they had to say, okay, manually you become the recon. It's just like, an SSA call, manually the DBAs and the applications is the optimizer for SQL calls.
Understood.
And that's the same
understood.
there. That's something that I have no problem with them. My problem is, hey, if you haven't done that before, don't think it's a simple process. It's still a thing, but okay, you got to look at the timing of each asset that you want to attach to this. Because if you switch it up the wrong way.
Wait, just one question.
This is interesting. This is interesting. Yeah.
Hey, I got a question. This is Ed. Wouldn't the DS Alec Palm, if it was set to yes, do a lot of this tape management that we're talking about now by your recovery products?
Correct. Like I said earlier, dynamic allocation. We rely on the recon because IMS is already keeping track of all this information for us. We don't have to go figure it out manually what data sets I need. So it's going to pull in the necessary image copies, change a key.
Exactly.
All the log data. So as long as you have that recon and those assets, you can recover.
Exactly.
That recon he just said. Now he said that recon. That's my point. That recon. So we got to make sure that recon for a given time is somewhere.
So every time you cut an IMS log, take a backup of that recon. That way you're guaranteed you can at least get to there.
Yeah, but see,
it sounds like almost when you guys are going to build this, that somehow we may want a copy of these recons over on that cloud or whatever offsite server. Yeah. And as SLDSs get created or whatever gets created, gets also updated to that offsite recon, which in a sense is a duplicate, a mirroring DR environment. But in any case, I mean, I know we're talking about SGC and how to basically how to build it, but from a recovery advisor perspective, what can it do for us automagically that to expedite any recovery situation? Am I asking a question too early because you did say you were going to get into a recovery advisor?
Yeah, well, I mean, we can go ahead and talk about it. So what it's going to do, it's going to go out there and monitor that, hey, I've got all these databases. I've got image copies for them. I have log data for them. Things haven't rolled off the catalog. I'm going to be able to do a recovery if I needed one because I have all the assets. So, I mean, it's going to constantly monitor that for you. It's actually a schedule within the utility. Where you can run that, once a day, once an hour, every 5 minutes, every minute if you wanted to, whatever frequency you feel like, and it goes out there and maybe takes a minute or less to run. And if you have a problem, it sends you an email. Hey, this is missing. That way you can go address it then. So from that standpoint, that's the biggest thing Recovery Advisor gets you is that peace of mind that, okay, when we get to recovery, I got everything I need. Now let's go build my recovery jobs, whether that's interactively with Recovery Manager or, generating some JCL ahead of time on your own.
Okay. Now you brought back memories. Because that was how the DR sites were handled. The thing there was, again, as long as somebody who controls the assets that be there, because I've seen where whoever controls the recons to make sure that you put the right recons there, because that's still the same thing. And you can look on probably on your problem things and look at telecommunications when they did some of these things where things wasn't set right. And that's what becomes with control, who's controlling what, to make sure, because even with the assets, you can give what they're considered false things. You could you have to check it, but you know the thing is okay. It didn't get scheduled yet. Something like that is going to be scheduled in the thing. And if they have monthly stuff, then people need to look at that. It depends on the complication of the integrated IMS applications with the DB2.
Right.
Because it's all about data processing. Okay, it's about data processing, not just so much the items that we're talking about to get those applications, because you can bring it up and they still can have logical problems in the applications. And that's
Right.
where somebody needs to talk about that. That's never mentioned, but we used to talk about it because it was important to our business.
Right.
Okay, so, hey, so I'm sorry, I think we've only got a couple minutes or 1 minute left, right? So can we today do a forward recovery from a safeguarded copy for IMS? If we have everything, all the artifacts that we need, all of the archives, all of the image copies, can we do a forward recovery?
Yes.
Okay,
As long as
So
you
you-
have all the artifacts, yes.
all right,
Now-
so that's what we need
Yes,
to
we can.
understand. We need to know what the artifacts are that you need.
Okay.
At least from the system side, what do we need to provide? What do we need to make sure that we, offload to an immutable site, cloud, whatever? What artifacts do you need to have restored on the safeguarded copy system in order to be able to do a forward recovery?
Wait. I think we're
Oh,
talking
yeah.
about two different. I think we're talking about two different things here. Wait, we're
I've been
talking about
talking
two
about
different
this
things
one
here.
thing the whole
What's the
meeting.
requirement? What's going on, guys? Come on, let's finish this up.
Yeah, keep quiet.
This is what I've been talking
We
about.
we
since
have
started
we
meeting.
have the requirements to do a forward recovery as a standard database forward recovery. We have those requirements. BMC has them, IBM has them. Those are there. I think the real question is does BMC have a solution today that they could recommend to us to do an SGC recovery? And if the answer is yes, what do we need to do to establish that? Because if we're going with the standard recovery manager, it does not address SGC, as far as I know. And
Okay.
Gary, correct me if I'm wrong on that, Gary.
So what is SGC? What's that an acronym for?
That's the safeguarded
So,
copy.
so
Oh,
what that is, it's a flash of the production system. It's an exact copy in a point in time. It's at the microsecond. It's a complete flash of the entire sysplex, and it's restored on a recovery system. And we've
Okay,
already
so-
done this.
so-
We've already done this for IMS. And it comes up fine, but basically, you get what you get at that point in time.
Right. It's like the system
2
went
hours
down
delayed.
and you had to come up emergency.
Yeah.
Basically.
And but it's 2 hour delay. What we want to know is how can we automate and what's the functionality or required artifacts needed to maybe bring that 2 hour data loss to minimize it to whatever recovery point we need to establish up to the next safeguarded copy, let's say, if they're done
Yeah.
every 2 hours.
Yeah.
Last
with
image
that said,
copy.
with that said, Al, I mean, it's 2 minutes back, but they still can be a minimum of 2 hours. They can go back even further if they find the bad data
Well,
still
yeah,
out there.
I mean,
Just
I mean,
to throw it out there.
We only
but-
need to go forward a maximum of 2 hours for right now.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
okay, that was mentioned a few hours, 2 hours, okay, for now.
Okay. So
So-
to be able to cover that, just to be safe, last image copy, no matter what time that was, all the logs from that image copy
Yeah.
up until whatever time you determine you need to get to, change of cumes between that period if you have them, and the last recon backup from the last archive log. You have all that safeguard or put on that system where you put that safeguard snap, you can recover your
Right,
data.
so, yeah, so that's,
Yeah,
so
well-
somebody needs to write that, get that down on a piece of paper. And that's what we need to look at. We need to make sure that those are the artifacts that we would need to offload in addition to the safeguarded copy.
Right.
These are things that we would have to probably archive every 5 minutes or at a very frequent interval. and then we would have to restore those artifacts on the safeguarded copy system when we do the recovery.
And this just isn't unique to us. I mean, we talk to customers all the time, oh, we got safeguarded copy, we're using our Cyber Vault or, whichever one.
Yeah,
But we need
yeah.
a forward recovery, it's like, yeah, you got to have
That's
all
it.
this other stuff too, which
So, yeah, Gary, do you have more information about that in this deck or in another deck as to what other companies have been doing and what we need to do to
Right.
start a POC to move this forward to test it?
not in this deck, but now that I know a little more what you're trying to do, I can
Yeah,
put
okay,
a little something together, slide or
right.
two.
That's what we're looking for, right? So that we could look to start changing whatever we need to get those artifacts available to us in that immutable backup, and then run a test and do an IMS start, right? And bring up everything and then do the forward recovery.
Okay.
And where can BMC's tooling that we have today assist in either the JCL for the recovery or doing a mass generation of image copies to make sure we have the system backed up appropriately for all the databases?
Generating all the recovery jobs that you may need for all the databases.
Yes, and the recovery jobs. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, here's one thing where we're going to discuss.
If you could run a little bit later, that's fine. I mean,
yeah, I got the rest of the
stay, could
afternoon,
stay.
so I'm okay.
Oh, okay, so whoever could stay. But I mean, that's where we want to go, right?
Okay.
What tooling do you have similar to what we've been working with Chad to automate the recovery and the submission of the recovery JCL, and whatever expertise and knowledge too that you could help us assist in that forward recovery with the artifacts needed to roll forward from the safeguarded copy restoration point flash.
So this is the toolkit I was talking about. You can see my screen.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, we can see it. Yep, I can
So,
see it.
so here's a database group I have set up called Demo. It has all these different databases in it. Well, over here is Recovery Wizard. So you get everything laid down at your site. You've got your logs, you got your image copies, you got the most current recon. I need to go build Recovery JCL.
Here
You can walk through here and you can choose your option. Do I want to do a pit recovery? Would last batch image copy be okay? We didn't talk about pit change of cum, but that's an option to send less assets off site. So where you don't have any potential of anything in flight, that may be an option. We can cover that in more detail, but rather than having to send all the logs, you could just do a pit change of cum every hour, every 2 hours, you might could do it every 5 minutes, depending on how active this system is. Or you can roll it all the way current, so if you've got all that information, you could do that. So let's just say we're going to pick a point in time. We'll go back an hour. Let's say we got to go back to whatever. Several different options you have. You can actually create recovery JCL, which in your case would be what you want to do. If you want to create simulated recoveries, say you want to test out, okay, we're bringing this application up. We're going to add it to our, recovery procedures. Maybe I want to do a simulated recovery, which is going to validate all your assets. Basically, Andy used to like to call it a recovery to an image or a pointer check. Recovery to a pointer check. It's going to do everything but write the output data sets. So it's going to validate your log data, your image copies, change of cums. So what you're backing up would have recovered fine. Or if you've got test databases, maybe you need to refresh from time to time. Recovery to alternate. You're never going to touch your production database. You're just going to go read those assets, all your image copies, logs, all that, build alternate data sets. So, if somebody calls up, hey, I got a problem in production, lay this database down. Recovery to alternate be a good option for you. But we'll go create recovery JCL. You just kind of walk through the wizard. All of these parameters, I'll help you guys get set up to get it configured. But you can override them if you need to. Building indexes, you can do that automatically. If you got those restart things we talked about earlier, you've got a little frequency that, that you can change your defaults. And as we get done, I can build that JCL. So just go out here and generate it. The only thing you can't submit from here, but I've asked them if they'll put it in it, before, so hopefully we're getting there. But the idea of this, it's gonna look at my whole database group that I had to find and build JCL for me. So if we look in here, RVP12, it went and just built all that JCL, so I didn't have to put anything in. Guess I didn't say my timestamp, but it would plug that timestamp in for you. Add all the JCL. This is an asynchronous recovery, so it's going to do as many of them as it can at once. If that overloads your system, obviously we can tweak some of those internal parameters to not do so much at once with the group limb. But I mean, you can easily build that whole group just like that.
Yeah. Hey, Gary, but just to reiterate, based on L's question, this tool that you're showing us now is the way we would do a recovery today. It's not going to help us in a safeguarded recovery unless we have the logs, the images, the change of cum data sets. If we don't have all those in a safeguarded recovery, we're not going to be able. We're not going to be able to recover forward.
Right.
We're going to get there.
Yeah.
Stop it, guys. We're going to get there. We're going to have
Yeah. No, we're going to get there.
We could test it. We could test this stuff now, right? With the availability of the sandbox, just like we're doing with DB2, right? And this work already has been done by the, Bob McNamara for the DB2 environment with Chad, right? We configured this, we defined the groups, we did all this other stuff so that we could take advantage of the automated JCL and the submission, right? So we're going to have to identify, and once we get and we figure out what we're going to do with that immutable backout, then we just put all that stuff there.
Of
right?
course, yeah.
That's
yeah,
easy. That's easy.
Yeah. Once BMC gives us that ability, sure, yeah.
Okay.
And for the most part, from what I'm saying, we're only the groups we're talking about either an existing change of cum group, or we can make that divisible by application specific data set groups to put in these JCLs.
With BMC's product, they have what they call internally a group. That's what he was showing. You could create groups out of that. There don't have to be a database group in the recons or a change of cum. They're talking about you could selectively create your own create groups within the JCL to work. Is that am I correct, BMC? That's what you're talking about there.
Right, and see, we'll go into the group creation. These groups I can create off anything I want.
Right.
So let's create a database.
Exactly.
I got several different options right there. DBD name, change of cum group, DBRC. With DBD name, I can use a wildcard, so I can get everything ABC asterisk. Here's another one that's kind of neat and unique for us. Say the application, this is aside from your DR question, but let's say your applications group, they put in something and it just hosed a bunch of databases. And they're like, hey, we need to recover. What do you need to recover? I don't know. Here's the PSB I was running. You could build that database group off that PSB and rebuild every database associated with it. So,
did you say off the PSB?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's
Oh man.
So
that's awesome. Been in their feature. That's been in their feature since day one, almost.
Yeah, that's been around a long time.
But like I said, you could have your own group. If you know your application, you have a group there, and you identify them that way, depending on the size of the databases and how you can get concurrency.
Thank God I've never had to use it.
Isn't that the truth?
But you guys are familiar with this AMI recovery product, right? Or we're not looking at this and we haven't played with this.
No, I haven't played with this one.
Yeah, I don't believe we played with this, but definitely something we need to expand on, of course.
Yeah, okay. And here's the mechanics of this, and I can help you get this set up. When
we looked at this the last time, we didn't think we would broach the approach from a recovery manager standpoint, but given these SAG requirements for recoveries, it seems like it'd be advisable.
Right.
Exactly.
And you can get all kind of metrics. Let me log. That's one I have been kind of blowing up. Let me get you a more stable environment. So like all those metrics you're talking about on your databases, you can start getting those in here, and you have, I would pick an index. I would pick a HowDB. So you can drill down through there and get all your metrics on your database. So.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I
You
see
got
why you don't use the PD.
Yeah, you got forecasting on all your size. Of course, you see my system's not real active. You kind of get some history of all the utilities that have run. So, I mean, you can do all that forecasting right from here. Now, there's another product called Advisor that does analytics on this. So you don't have to go look and go, oh, this database is getting close to running out of space. Maybe we need to go tell the applications folks to purge something, or, it's getting too fragmented. It's time for a reorg. It sends you an email when things like that are coming up.
But we don't have it. We don't have that product though, do we?
No. So, I mean, you'd have to go do all that analysis on your own. I'm just saying, remember in this one where you saw stuff grayed out? Those are the features that would be part of that other.
Okay.
But that's a good thing, if it's something you decide later you don't have to reinstall nothing. Just, license it, get a password, and all the bells and whistles in the spaceship start coming on.
With the tools that we have today, and I heard you talk about it a little bit earlier, with the tools we have today, can we measure data set usage and the percent of allocated space that's used?
Yes, you can see all that because that'll come from the pointer check reports. You just don't get the analytics off of it.
Will that come from the hash checker, or do we need pointer checker plus to do that?
Nope, comes from the hash check.
Oh, it does come
Excellent.
with hash checker. Okay.
Excellent. And that's what we were thinking. That's exactly what we were thinking.
Yeah. So, I mean,
All right, don't get too excited, guys. We want to finish on the recovery stuff. It looks like it looks like you guys are a little dated and we need to get an update here on using full features of BMC. Right? We pay for it. We got to maximize its usage.
So we kind of run through a lot of these, there's pretty much any flavor of recovery you want to do, whether that's forward, simulated, timestamp, timestamp and PIT to me are interchangeable. But, I remember years ago they came out with the PIT technology and I was like, what is that? It's like, pick a time on that clock and we're going to recover every committed transaction of that. And I was like, you're crazy. I ran it a few times at our DR test and it worked great. So,
Yep.
if you're taking T0 copies, we'll support that. I mean, if you've got the old out of the box IBM Recovery JCL, we'll play nice with it. But I mean, like I said, like the image copy one, that's the worst way you can run the utility, because it really, really handcuffs our ability to run efficiently and do things easier for you.
Yeah, that's one reason we were considering a recovery conversion to the BMC image copies because of those complexities actually with the IBM image copies.
Yeah, and that's the good thing about the toolkit. You can go generate all that JCL really quickly.
Oh, exactly.
Maybe you generate one or two skeletons and create a big package of JCL, or you go walk through the wizard every time. You got options on how you want to do it. You don't care about how the old one runs, taking it offline, starting it back, kind of that way. So yeah, we covered some of these a minute ago, recovery to alternate snapshots, as it does a recovery, it's going to check pointers too. So, I mean, the last thing you want to do is lay down a database and have pointer errors at the end. So, during the recovery, you're going to know if, for some reason it has a pointer issue. The last PIT CA, I think I talk about that. I may talk about that. No, that's PIT technology. I'll cover PIT CA. PIT CA is kind of the same. You see all these little units of work to the left of my point in time selected. The only transactions that are going to get applied to that database are those that completed before this PIT time. So you don't have to worry about laying in an incomplete transaction just because it was on the database, at that time. So we go through IMS, we look at all those log records as we're doing the recovery. So only things that are committed, are going to get applied to that database. You don't have to worry about, having a problem, after you do the recovery. You know, if you were just doing a standard recovery, it's just going to lay down your image copy, you know, which may or may not have pointer issues if it was taken online. Notice the JCL is very similar. So almost easily you could take your image copy JCL, change mostly where it says ICP to RVP, and for the most part, it's going to run. You know, the control cards are that similar on most of the things we have. So you don't have to worry about deleting the database data sets ahead of time. You see this AMS PDS data set here. You can go do your IDCAMS work ahead of time. We've actually got a utility and recovery manager that goes out and captures that information for you. That would be something I would recommend to run frequently. You know, that way, once you have, you know, you're starting to do recoveries like this, you don't want to have 6-month-old data set allocations and your database has been growing. Last thing you want to do is, you know, spend 20 minutes doing a recovery and then it failed because you ran out of space, you know, because your allocation was too small. So
Question, are you talking about the DRAMS utility?
the DRAMS utility, yep.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. We were incorporating that.
Okay. So yeah. Somebody trying to come back in. Oh, we lost Andreas.
He had to reboot his PC. I thought it was him that said that. Updates.
And now when you got the building on the indexes, that's also included in the recovery that does not require a separate index bill, correct?
Right.
As I'm looking at this.
Right.
Okay.
It's part of the recovery solution. So that
Okay.
you have the whole solution, so you're covered there.
Yeah, I couldn't remember if we had the recovery manager or not, and why we decided to defer developing that, but you bought a lot of it back. Yeah.
Yeah, you bought the whole backup recovery solution, so you had all those products on that first page I showed you.
Okay, thank you.
So yeah, you see all our different dynamic allocations. I think somebody asked about DSAlloc, you know, that's going to dynamically allocate all the data sets needed. DBAlloc, all the database data sets needed, you know, and some of these are defaulted anyway. We just include them to be able to talk about them. If you've got any fast path, you know, do you have any fast path or is everything?
No.
Do not.
No.
No fast path. No fast path, no LDB.
Okay. That leads me to another question. Since you said no HAL-DB, where are you guys at with managed ACBs?
Hold on a second. We do have HAL-DBs, but they're a small group of data sets, as you know, they're for the catalog.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
I didn't want to answer that.
So you have one HAL-DB.
Yeah,
One.
we don't have application HAL-DBs, but we do have catalog HAL-DBs.
Okay.
Just that one.
And that has to be taken consideration of how they set it up. We'll talk about that later.
Yeah, I mean we fully support the managed ACBs, so no worry there.
Good. And that's installed. The managed ACBs are installed across all production.
Okay, good. So you guys are bleeding edge then. We got some customers. You know, some were early adopters, you know, the bigger shops, but some of the smaller shops, they're kind of, you know, I talk to them and they go, "What's managed ACBs?" And I'm like, "Let me put you in touch with Deepak Kohli."
Oh my gosh.
And come back when you, of course, I got one shop that doesn't even have DBRC in production, so they're still in the 70s. But anyway, so yeah, I mean, you know, the timestamp keyword, you've got lots of different flavors there. You know, you can go back to last image copy, you know, do a timestamp recovery, you know, whatever time you want to do with the PIT, that last PIT CA we talked about. So it kind of makes your JCL a little easier, you know, to where you don't have to punch in a timestamp if you don't want to. Recover multiple groups at once. We take the image copy at the end as part of the recovery, so you don't have to go worry about drawing a new line in the sand after you do your recoveries. You know, we'll go ahead and take care of that for you, so that once you get it recovered, you know, you can bring it. Everything gets brought up, and you know you can go back to your normal job instead of having to go do an image copy after the fact.
And that after the recovery image copy, that image is also uses the hash pointer checker, right?
Correct.
Okay,
Yep.
thanks.
If you wanted to incorporate, issuing type 2 commands, so you say, in this example, we want to take the database offline, do our recovery, it's going to interact with your SCI, take the database offline, do your recovery, start it at the end of it. So a little more of the automation features that try to do everything within the same job step that you would need to do for the recovery, so that you're not having to call operations to take the database offline so you can do your recovery. We can manage all that within one job step. And like I said earlier, you got no IDCAMs. It incorporates that all in one job step with this IDCAMs keyword as well. You can do multiple recoveries at the same time if you needed to, for several different change of queue groups or database groups or individual DBDs. Possibilities are endless, but it sounds like you already had change of queue groups set up. So that's how I would recommend doing it. If you already have it defined in DBRC, there's no sense doing extra work here. Try to make it mimic what you already have set up. Make your life easier. Let's see. Here's a PIT timestamp example. There's probably 15 or 20 different timestamp formats you can use. They're all documented, so whichever flavor you feel like plugging in there is up to you. Sort 64 is going to use above the bar storage, so you kind of use as much of the resources as you can. Don't try to use everything below the line. So anything that we can throw up there, to get more addressability, we will. Yeah, that's just another example of some of the keywords. Of course, this one's that simulate I talked about. So this one would do everything but recover these databases. So it's going to validate all my input recovery assets. If you were in a data sharing environment, which you're not, obviously in those environments, first thing you had to do is run a change of queue group or a change of queue for the databases there, because you got logs from each system. You don't necessarily have to do that because we're going to do a log merge under the covers. We call it an implicit log merge. So, depending on the size of your database, and the number of logs coming in, may or may not want to let the tool do it for you. It may just take longer, but we do it for you, on the fly. So you don't have to remember to do a CA if you're in data sharing, but you guys aren't. But if you ever get there, just know that the tool can handle that without a need for a CA. Yeah, we've covered most of that already again. This is that recovery.
One clarification on that last comment. When you say in data sharing, would being share level 3 in the VSAM data set and the DBRC definition suffice for a limited data sharing where that would work?
No, I'm talking about multiple IMS systems sharing the same recon. You're going to have log data sets from each. That's what I mean by log merge.
We're single.
Okay.
We're single.
Yeah. So
okay.
You guys don't have to worry about that. But if you ever do, it's already in the product.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. Here's just another example of JCL to do a recovery to alternate. You notice you got these keywords in red down here. So it's going to take, whatever these database data set names are defined in DBRC, and it's going to append CWA dot whatever, so it's going to rename your output data sets to that. So you got test environments you need to redo frequently. This may be something that's, attractive for you to do as well to quickly, reload data and test. Do you guys ever sunset any applications or have any need to kind of like snap off an application, say maybe for like month end, or rebuild a whole test environment frequently? Maybe the DVDs in test aren't the same as in production and you need to refresh them. Do you spend a lot of time rebuilding things like that, or?
We do not.
Okay. Then I'm going to skip over this archive image copy But just know it's a way to back up not only the database, it's going to get all the assets as well. All your IDCAMS definitions, your DBRC definitions, if you got any exits defined, your DVD at the time, your dynamic allocate, your MDAs, it's going to grab everything environmentally. So if for some reason, especially with HowDB, but you guys, only have the catalog, but say like you had a big HowDB environment, or any database, over time, the application may change. The database may need to, add a few more segments, add some more fields. You could use this product to back it up as it was, at that time. Maybe 5 years down the road, somebody goes, hey, can we put it back like that? Or I need to see some data from there. You can quickly and easily lay down that database exactly like it was, even though the structure has changed since then. You've got everything you need. So doesn't sound like that's something you guys would use, but it's in this deck, so I thought I'd mention it. We got a lot of customers that need to snap off things at a certain point and lay them to test, or just when they sunset an application, they kind of save the environment just in case somebody wants to look at the data again. Do you run change of queue at all?
Yeah, change of queue is run.
Okay. Are you
IBM change queue.
Okay. Good thing about our change of queue, you can do multiple CA groups, only one pass of the logs. So with your out of the box IBM stuff, you're only doing one change of queue group per log pass. So huge time saver here. You don't have to do a Gen JCL. As you can see, the JCL is very similar to the other two products that we've already talked about. Dynamic allocation, you're going to see that be a recurring trend as well. We're going to read the recon. We're going to dynamically allocate everything for you. Here's the big kicker with us. Everything sort is eligible to be offloaded to zip. So we throw it off. So you're going to see a big CPU savings here because a lot of this gets offloaded to zip. So definitely something, if you're already running change of queue with the IBM, this is going to be much faster and more efficient. And like we talked about earlier, JCL is real easy. So if you definitely, I would recommend looking into this one as well. If you're already running change of queue, let's get it a little more efficient with the change of queue.
Yeah, you're saying that your change of queue is going to use less CPU?
Yes.
Wow. Okay.
Yep. So as far as the change of queue, obviously you have the normal one that can be used by our utilities, the out of the box IMS utility, any other vendor as well. These next two are particular to us. There's a no timestamp PIT CA. It's kind of like a normal one. Nothing in flight gets accumulated. So you could use this into a standard recovery utility if you wanted to, or the timestamp PIT CA. This is one special to us. We actually mark it invalid in the recon so that nothing else can use it. Only Recovery Plus can validate this PIT change of queue. The good thing about this one is you need the image copy and this PIT change of queue. That's it. You don't need any log data to ship off, nothing. So this might be something you want to use depending on the size of your system. If you're going to take a lot of change of queue frequently, to minimize the assets, you have to get over to that, immutable side. We can certainly explore this one with you. So, for traditional folks doing DR that were just trying to minimize what they sent off site, this has always been a great option. Of course, now these days you can't lose any data, or you got to be minimal. I know customers, that they had like a 2-hour SLA. Just get me to within 2 hours. They love this option. They take this CA every 2 hours, ship it off. Every time they ran an image copy, they'd send it off and start sending off the CAs again. So they didn't have to send all that log data. So it definitely helped from a transmission standpoint what they had to send off site. Andy always loved these slides. They take forever to paint.
Yes, he did.
So as you can see, the timestamp PIT CA is much like that, PIT recovery timestamp. Anything before our timestamp, not going to be considered, as part of the CA that gets accumulated. It's going to know about them for next time, on the no time stamp. So it'll accumulate them next time, but they'll not be part of this CA. So if you use a no time stamp PIT CA, you're still going to get a good logically correct database, but your recovery is going to want the log data to get those in-flight transactions. So this is one where we call it internally, we call it the 2 log rule, that you'll need 2 IMS logs to be able to, efficiently recover to that timestamp without any issues, because the recovery utility needs to go verify those in-flight transactions that weren't part of the CA. Whereas the timestamp PIT CA, he doesn't care about anything that finished after the timestamp. It's not considered as part of the recovery. So in this option, you don't got to send the slits to DR. All you need is image copy, and this CA, you get a good valid database of committed transactions to this timestamp. So this could also be something that you push over to DB2 as well. Just say, here's my timestamp, DB2 use this timestamp, or DB2, well, in this case, we're the driver of who determines what the recovery point is. And this could be something you work with your applications team on, hey, every 10 minutes, every 5 minutes, whatever, let's go run a PIT CA. This may be an option you want to choose as well for your recovery strategy. So any questions about change of queue? All right. So on to our last piece, recovery manager. So you got a lot of different things you can do with recovery manager. You can go set up predefined groups within it, or you can just, use your CA groups that you have. The recovery advisor is built into here. It's going to go monitor all those recovery assets for you, so that you don't have any issues. Once you get to recovery, you're going to know about something being a problem way ahead of time. The recovery extension is what I talked about, to where, like with DBRC, you get image copy 1, image copy 2. That's all you can register in the recon. Recovery extension will let you record up to 10 image copies. So we keep those in the recovery manager repository. So if that's something you want to use to keep extra assets that you can easily pull into your recovery jobs, as you take that backup of the recon, back up this recovery repository. It's just a VSAM data set. It's only used by recovery managers, so nothing else really knows about it. And from a cyber resiliency standpoint, it's another point that maybe somebody doesn't know about. Say they go corrupt your recon or something, in the big picture thing, they may not know about this. So this could be another place that you can safeguard, bad term, you can secure assets, that may not be known to somebody just trying to hack your IMS system from that standpoint. So maybe from an audit standpoint, this gives you another level of security within, how many levels of, backups and things like that you have.
Can the repository be, or let me ask the question a different way. Where is the repository maintained? On the mainframe, I imagine, but
yeah,
could you,
yes.
could you,
all these
also,
tools are
could you also offload it somewhere else to a cloud or another server or anything? I imagine you could just.
I mean, it's a VSAM data set, so you can back it up as frequently as you need and put that back up on the cloud. So I would, if you're going to use the recovery manager repository to keep a lot of information too, when you cut a log, back this thing up too. Just
yeah,
that way you're extra
I'm
covered.
just thinking. I'm thinking about something that I don't want to bring it up now, but for another discussion on safeguarded recovery. If we could offload the repository, maybe we could use that with safeguarded recovery. But again, that's for another discussion.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of this is a lot of moving pieces. Even with the safeguarded, that's just the way it is. Unfortunately.
Sure.
It's got a lot of functions. This whole point of consistency, nobody uses that anymore, but it was kind of a quick way of making a recovery point, but with pit technology, there's really no reason to do things like that. The log analysis, that's kind of a nice little tool, you know, like back to our example with the PSB, you know, somebody ran a job, messed some things up, but they're not really sure what time. You know, you could go in there with a log analysis, use that PSB, maybe use a CA group, number of databases, and it's going to go out there and show you all the windows when there were no updates occurring. So you don't have to, it's, you know, these are not, you know, naturally occurring recovery points, you know, that like a, you know, an image copy or a dealloc record or thing, you know, sync points within DBRC. It's going to go show you when there was no activity. So this may be something you could use for your analysis to help your applications group determine, hey, this is a quiet spot. How about this window? So maybe something you use, you know, the find recovery points is obviously going to go out there and find, you know, where did I do a batch image copy? Where was a dealloc done? Where did I do a log sync like you see down there on the one? But you guys aren't data sharing, but if you were, that'll coordinate a log switch across all your IMS in the Plex. So see a lot of customers use that to kind of, you know, rather than have, you know, each IMS just logging whenever they feel like, they coordinate that log switch. So it kind of helps get them a good consistent point of committed data. That way, you know, they're not trying to run a recovery where one IMS had already flipped the logs, but the other one, you know, some of the data that would have been needed for recovery was still in the olds, you know, so that just kind of backs up their window of where they could have recovered to, you know, if the system were to crash. Positive response, back in the days before type 2, you know, from a batch standpoint, you'd issue a command and maybe sometimes it would complete, you know. I mean, I remember we used to put in dummy tape mounts just to make the job pause long enough to hope the command would complete, but it still never would complete sometimes. This actually waits on those type 1 commands to come back before the next job step completes. So if you got any systems that don't have type 2, you know, obviously that's positive response now, but, you know, that may be something you want to use as well. If for some reason you needed to be able to clean up your recon, say you needed a cold started on that safeguarded copy rather than just bring it up warm, got a utility out there, it's going to go prepare that recon to be able to cold start. It's going to get rid of open log records, subsystem records, you know, batch jobs, whatever. It's going to get it ready if you had to bring it up cold for some reason. So, I mean, if you got a up and busy system, you know, there's all kind of records that are in IMS that are going to prevent a cold start. So that's something you need to do. There are definitely utilities around that. And, you know, we talked about the IDCAMs, the DRAMs utility. That's been around forever. Very powerful tool as far as capturing your data set allocations, you know, and it's, you know, you can either keep them as is, you can rename them, your data set names, you know, say like if you needed to create some for your test environment, you can easily create those alternate database names for the IDCAMs. So, you know, if you needed to generate them for whatever process you needed as well. So, but that's definitely something I would recommend, you know, setting up on some consistent basis to go capture that information. It's a real easy job to set up, you know, a couple parameters, you point it at the recon and it goes and figures out what all you told it to do. So I think you guys already have that running, right? I think that's what
that's correct.
Okay.
But
So,
not, yeah.
yeah, so here's kind of that fine recovery point, you know, and a nice little graphical, you know, you go pick this point in time, you know, and it's going to go find those standard recovery points, you know, and it's based on, you know, all the log data, you know, you don't have to do a list history and try to figure things out, you know, to figure a good recovery point, you know, if you were having to do that. Here's kind of the ISPF window. They are working to put the recovery manager pieces that are all ISPF now into the toolkit. So maybe later this year, first of next year, they may be done with that project. But, you know, our goal is to be, you know, because everybody likes to look at a nice GUI screen these days, especially the youngsters. So we're trying to get it to where it's just one stop to be able to do your job as a DBA rather than having to bounce around from TSO to some GUI page, you know, to whatever. So, I mean, you can see here, you know, here's all our different recovery windows it found. You know, based off of what it is, you know, it's going to be a batch image copy. You know, if Recovery Plus is required, you know, it'll say that, you know, if it was, you know, like a PIT CA, if you could use the standard utility, that's typically the IBM as well. So gives you all those different windows based off this group that you defined, you know, like I was saying, you know, you can do them ad hoc, you can do them ahead of time. Here's kind of all the groupings you can build things off of: DVD name, PSB name, you know, if you've got CA, DBDS groups, maybe based off your data set name, you know. These days, you know, DASD's pretty stable. So I can't remember in 15 years somebody's called in wanting to do a vol SEER recovery, but you know, at one time in the day, you know, that used to be important to people, you know, lose a volume and have to recover everything on it. So it's going to go out and, you know, figure all that out for you based on what's defined in DBRC. So, so build these ahead of time, build them on the fly. It's kind of up to you how you want to do it, because all the information's in DBRC. Here's kind of some screenshots of the toolkit as well. As far as the, if you wanted to generate individual JCL, you know, obviously you can do that pretty easily. It's going to build all that. Single members you can actually submit from here, or you can save them to a PDS where with the recovery wizard works at a group level and it walks you through the little wizard to pick everything. That one you actually have to submit, you know, from a PDS where you save it to. Kind of one little fail safe they built in there, but I mean, would you guys find value in it having a submit button from there, or do you kind of like the way it, I guess, prevents you from inadvertently running one?
I mean, from my perspective, going to have to play with it before any decision is made.
Fair enough. But
I mean, we're obviously going to go with your recommendation, but there's a lot of testing that needs to be done here.
Yeah. Well, no, that was just a question in general. You know, would you want to be able to submit from this utility, the JCL you build for recovery?
Honestly, I'm not sure.
Fair enough.
It depends. It depends on the situation. I mean,
Yeah.
Right.
You know, the right answer, I guess, it all depends. Right?
It
Yeah,
depends.
exactly.
Right. So.
Sound like IBM. It all depends, right?
That's IT in general, right? What do you want to do? Sure, we can do it. So here's kind of a, you know, a nice little graphic I set up that helps, you know, a lot of customers, you know, maybe put your sleds on DASD, your secondary sleds, you know, throw them out in the cloud, you know, like Chad said, we got an Amy cloud offering, you know, from my stand, Chad knows more about it if he's still on here than I do, but from my standpoint, it's just a different device. You know, I give it whatever unit's been defined for it, and I just route it out there, you know. So from a DBA standpoint, you know, I'm kind of, you know, clueless as to what it is, other than if I know, you know, hey, this unit's for cloud or this unit's for DASD or tape. So, you know, obviously, you know, make multiple copies of your image copies and change your cubes, because we allow you to do it. You know, in this day and time, you know, you know, maybe put that first set off to DASD. You know, I actually talked to a customer the other day that still puts it on tape and backs up a truck. You know, that's where their DR plan stops. But you know, now you got options, you know, of to store things elsewhere. You know, the cloud's definitely a good option. You know, or a worm device, or you know, something that gives you an immutable copy of your database assets. You know, for recovery. So, but that is the end of my presentation.
A very good.
Thank you.
Very good presentation.
But I mean,
Thank you.
don't hesitate to reach out to me. I mean, that is my role for you guys. I mean, that's what I do. I talk to customers every day, you know, helping them, you know, and a lot of them here lately have been back up in recovery. You know, hey, we're having to do this now thanks to some, new regulations, So, I mean, that's what I'm here for. Bounce questions off of me, hey, can you give me a sample JCL to do this? I do not mind. I actually enjoy it, so.
You'll be hearing a lot from us. I guarantee you that.
Yeah, thanks, Gary. This was very informative. But so as a follow-up then, we know what we have to possibly place off the current environment to an amenable source
Right.
so that we could do the recovery, right? We've gone
Right.
through that. We know that. I know Andy asked for it in writing, but I think everybody knows we could agree it. Somebody could just drop me a note, maybe CC you to make sure we got it right, or is there anything else on that?
Nope, just those 4 items. Image
Okay.
copy, log, CA if you're taking them. Now, I know a lot of customers that don't like the overhead of a change of cum. It's like, well, we only need it at DR. We'll just run it there, which is fine. It just, that's one thing that's going to take you longer to recover potentially because you've got to go do that CA work then, where you could do it ahead of time, and shorten your actual recovery. So, I mean, that's one thing you got to play with,
Okay.
you
All
guys.
right, good. And then another thing, you said maybe about a quick deck about how do we go with the forward recovery with the use of the BMC IMS recovery solution. You'll have something like that, or just maybe talk about what other companies are doing for this.
Yeah, I mean, I
No?
can throw something together, but I mean, it's what we just talked about. You've got to have these other assets
Yeah.
off-site from
Okay.
that safeguard. But I mean, I can draw that up in a slide if that helps you.
Yeah, draw that up on a slide, and then I guess what I was concerned about was the steps of what we would have to do to go forward, right? To really, embellish the BMC solution to automate and assist, right? So like, quick bullet items of like what we would need to do relative to get this integrated within our recovery scheme, right? Like a project plan type thing, but very high level milestones. Like, you run this, run that, run the BMC, Amy generate or whatever to create the point or whatever, however the details are for your solution.
Okay. So see, I'll break it up into steps to complete on your production and then steps to recover at DR. How about that?
That sounds excellent. Great. Thank you. Yep. All right. Anything else, guys? I know we went overboard here.
Not right now, but I'm sure we'll have a lot of questions going forward.
Yeah.
We're
All
good.
right. Well, we'll wait till Gary gets back to the updates, and then, like I said, we'll look to try this out. So then, Gary, we might need to call on you then to help assist create the groups for the recovery generation and JCLs and stuff like that. So great call. Appreciate it.
Okay.
Yep.
Do you want to try to set up the toolkit so you can start kicking the tires on that while you're working on, making sure you have all your assets covered?
You mean on the dashboard that you were showing for the
Right. Yeah, because
the
it's a
web
couple started
dashboard?
tasks. Yeah, it's a couple started tasks you'll need to set up. So I can definitely send you sample JCL to get that started if you want.
Yeah, that would be good. But that setup would probably be done under Andy's organization, right? From the system side.
Okay.
And then we would just roll with, usage. So we would have questions on how to push the buttons and, whatever else type of thing.
Copy us on whatever you sent to the system guys.
I don't know.
Yeah,
This
okay. Well, that was just Andy. That's Andy on the that was Andy. He's the systems manager.
Okay, I've
So
never
he was
talked.
on the invite. All right, I got to drop for 5:30. Get ready for that. So, all right, appreciate it, guys. Good deal.
Yeah.
If you're having a off tomorrow, have a good Memorial Day weekend. All right.
Yep.
Thank you.
All right, take care.
Everybody
Thanks,
stay
All right.
safe.
Have a great weekend.
All right,
everybody.
all.
Thank you
Take
very much,
care.
everybody.
Thanks, Gary.
Yeah.
Again, great job. Bye now.
Thank you. Bye.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Gary.
Gary. Bye,
You're
y'all.
welcome. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.